We were driving at night and chatting merrily. Dad said the new town was small and had better ecology, which was good for me. Moreover, the principal of the local school I was about to go, Mr. Hill, was Dad's best friend. He'd take care of me. Suddenly we heard a loud pop, and our car swirled on the road. I closed my eyes in fear. Dad brought me back to my senses and said he needed to go for help as one of the tires burst. So I stayed alone on the roadside. A pickup truck stopped near me. Guys started whistling and asking to take a ride with them. It was so scary what to do. One guy left the car, grabbed my hand and dragged to the truck. I screamed as loudly as I could, and then Dad showed up. The guys left right away. The entire next day I was recovering, but then pulled myself together and Dad and I went to school. The principal was so glad. We'd signed lots of papers and finally I headed to my new class. The door opened and I froze. Seated by the front desk was one of those guys. Can't be. My vision blurred and I swayed. The principal introduced me, wished me luck and left. To make matters worse, the only spot available was near that guy. Mr. Brown, the art history teacher, told me to sit near Ethan, so that's this hooligan's name. I barely could breathe during the entire lesson and was scared even to look his side until Ethan poked my side and whispered, "Come on, sorry, we were idiots." I smiled nervously, but seemed it was a relief. After the lessons, Ethan followed me, asking where had I come from. And then Dad saw us. He attacked Ethan, shouting and threatening to call the police. Mr. Hill was near and hurried to help, so the principal learned what happened. He announced Ethan it was the last warning, or he'd never have his GSE. Ethan hadn't succeeded for long. Soon we had yet another newbie, Carter. Ethan said during the very first break that there was a necessary initialization to jump out of the window. Otherwise, all the classmates would bully Carter until graduation. It was on the ground floor, but right under the window was a muddy puddle. Carter climbed to the windowsill and looked out, and then he was pushed. Ethan never made it to Mr. Brown's class, and soon we learned he was dropped out. For several days I've been thinking of Ethan. He was evil, but he must have had a chance. I asked Dad to talk to Mr. Hill, but Dad replied, I just should keep away from Ethan. Daddy, I just want to help him. And you promised to fulfill all my wishes. This is my first and last request. Then he looked at me sadly and said Ethan would learn the truth sooner or later and would then turn his back upon me. Ethan returned to school, but the principal said he must catch up with us in all subjects or there'd be no more hope for him. Ethan addressed me in the canteen and asked to help him. We were studying for several hours after the lessons until his friends came and called him a nerd. Don't listen to them. You must study to graduate and go to college. Big Jack replied that I was messing with the wrong guys. He grabbed me by the collar and dragged to the window Carter was thrown from recently. Help someone! The window opened and I saw a huge muddy puddle. There I go. Suddenly someone pushed Big Jack violently. It was Ethan. He said to Big Jack to get lost or he'd be in trouble. I threw a grateful look at Ethan and whispered, "Thanks." No one had ever interceded for me before. After that, no one interrupted us, and we studied every day both at school and at my place. Ethan turned out to be gifted and studied fast. Soon you will improve your grades and won't need my help anymore. He looked at me gently and replied in this case he'd worsen them again. What? Ethan, don't say this. It won't do any good. Seems we shouldn't see each other anymore. I said this unwillingly. Ethan seemed to sense this, came closer and kissed me. I'd lost my sleep since then. We spent all our free time together, walked and talked a lot. And once Ethan brought me to a roof where was a beautifully set table right under the starry skies. Ethan embraced me from behind and whispered he'd like to say something important. My breath was short and my heart sank. We'd gone too far. Ethan, no, don't speak, please. It is me who needs to confess. I'm terminally ill. Blood cancer is killing me. Dad and I moved to this town hoping its good ecology might prolong my life. But I keep breathing only because of you. Ethan suddenly jumped to his feet, shouting I was a traitor not saying anything to him, then claimed he didn't want to see me anymore and ran away. I knew this was coming. My heart ripped in pain. I'd cried for several hours on Dad's shoulder, and he stroked my hair. All is over. Forever. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Dad went to open, and I heard him scream, "You? Get out of my home! Get lost!" I came there and saw Ethan with a huge bunch of flowers. Ethan said, "Please forgive me, Mr. Powell. I was an idiot, but I love your daughter with all my heart, and if you let me, I'll be with her, no matter how long she has left." Dad was silent, then shook Ethan's hand and stepped aside. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "I love you and I'm ready to spend by your side all the days you have," and hugged me. After graduating, we traveled to the ocean. I knew already I had only a couple of months more, but I was happy to spend them with Ethan. My life might be short, but I had time to meet my true love. Like the video? Subscribe and give us a like. Support the channel. Thank you.
Sam raced along the racetrack at the speed of 240 miles an hour. He skidded on the turns. I gripped the seat with all my strength. And Sam yelled at me to jump out of the car right now. What? I am going to crash! Suddenly at the next turn, Sam abruptly slowed down. I hit my forehead on the glass. What the hell are you doing? Sam pressed the emergency door opening button. What did he want to do? God, I was going to fall out. He pushed me hard. I immediately flew out and felt like I hit something. Pain shot through my entire body. My vision darkened. I only had time to notice Sam's wild look, but I left him for that look and passion for racing. We met at a race car show where I was doing a TV report. I loved racing since I was a kid, and I used to watch it with my dad every weekend. During the live broadcast, it suddenly began to rain and a strong wind rose. Then Sam, one of the best racers in the state, came up to me. He opened his umbrella over me and suggested that we go to lunch together. I was so happy, but I was still looking for some kind of trick in this. I never had any luck with guys. But Sam was so kind and had a brilliant sense of humor. At the end of the evening, I realized that I was beginning to fall in love. A week later, he asked me to move in with him. It was all like a happy dream. I couldn't believe that after all those assholes, I'd finally met someone normal. But I took a chance, packed up and moved in with Sam. On our first night together, we had a romantic dinner, but he looked worried and avoided eye contact. I tensed. Something happened. Sam said he had a confession to make, and he would understand if I decided to leave him after that. The excitement made me feel queasy. I was already prepared for him to tell me about his cheating, but Sam said something else. It turned out that he could not have children. At first, I couldn't believe my ears. I always dreamed of a baby. My eyes instantly filled with tears. I cried all night, and Sam just sat there and stroked my hair. This was very hard news. But I knew that no one had ever treated me so well, and although I dreamed of having a child, I understood that the most important thing was a happy relationship. After weighing everything up, I made a firm decision to stay with Sam. After all, the main thing was that we loved each other, and we could adopt a child. Tears welled up in Sam's eyes. He kept telling me that I would never regret being with him. And he confirmed it with actions. Sam made me breakfast every morning, took care of me, and gave me presents. I felt like the happiest girl in the world. As the major championship of the year approached, Sam spent more and more time training. I tried to support him, but he came home so tired and sullen. Once he even raised his voice at me. When I suggested that we go for a ride in the evening, I was so hurt. Besides, Sam never took me to the races with him, whereas the other racers always took their girlfriends. Maybe he was ashamed of me. Sam distanced himself from me every day, and I decided to take matters into my own hands. After all, what did he love most? Me and the race, so I needed to combine it. I arrived at the racetrack a few hours before the start of the competition. Sam was already here, drinking a milkshake by his sports car, and at the moment, I had an idea. I decided to get in the car to give him a real surprise. But Sam never left his car for a second. Damn it. Fortunately, not far away, I noticed some girls begging the guard to let them go to the race. What if I took out my ID, went to the guard, and said that these girls were my interns? The guard nodded, and the girls almost threw themselves on my neck with delight. Be quiet, please. I've got something for you to do. Do you see Sam the racer? You need to take more selfies with him. The girls looked at each other in bewilderment and immediately rushed to Sam. He never refused to take a selfie with his fans. While the girls were taking pictures, I was able to sneak to the car and climbed inside. I would never get used to how cramped it was. I barely hid behind the driver's seat, and just in time, Sam was already getting behind the wheel. I was looking forward to how happy he would be to have such a surprise. Except, damn, was he on his way to the racetrack already? Sam started to accelerate, and I heard him swear. The car did not accelerate to the maximum. It was because of me. My weight slowed everything down. There was no further delay. I scrambled out of my hiding place with a guilty face, and Sam swerved in surprise. We almost hit the fence. But he quickly pulled himself together and shouted that I was setting him up. He was going to lose because of my stupid trick. I was shaking, but what to do? In an icy tone, Sam said that he was going to slow down on the turn, and at the moment, I would have to jump out of the car. Was this a joke? No, you're a jerk. I am going to crash. At that moment, Sam opened the door and pushed me out of the car with all of his strength. I woke up in a hospital room. God, I couldn't even feel my hands, and I couldn't move. All the events flashed in my head, and I felt so angry at Sam. I hated him. His race win was more important than my life. As luck would have it, the news was just being turned on in the ward, and suddenly I heard a familiar voice. Sam was on the screen. With a happy smile, he accepted congratulations for winning the race and was awarded a cash prize, $2 million. So he almost killed me for the money? I felt a mixture of powerlessness and anger. How dared he? And most importantly, how could I have believed his lies all this time? A nurse came into the room and told me that someone came to see me. I forcefully turned my head toward the door and saw Sam. What a jerk. You were so cocky to show face to me. Sam was standing with a huge bouquet of flowers, and suddenly he got down on one knee and begged for my forgiveness. Go away, please. The devices above my head began to beep sharply, and the doctor came immediately. He told Sam to get out of here right away. I couldn't be nervous right now. Sam left, but he didn't stop looking for a meeting. He passed gifts through nurses and notes with only the phrase, "Please listen to me." I felt bad just thinking about talking to him, but his persistence amazed me. All right, let him come. But what could he tell me? I certainly didn't expect what would happen next. Sam was in the room an hour later. Suddenly, he knelt down in front of my bed and took my hand. And then, looking into my eyes, he said that he had news. My stomach went cold. Sam said it was all about his ex-girlfriend, Caroline. Stop, so that was your news? Oh my god, are you two getting together? Sam looked down and said she was pregnant. By him. I couldn't believe it. How? I thought you couldn't have children. Sam started to stammer out that it was a 1 in a million chance, and he didn't believe it himself, but the DNA results confirmed it. To me, his words sounded like they were coming out of the water. But that wasn't all. It turned out that Caroline was seriously ill and needed a liver transplant, and her family had no money. If I don't help her, she'll die with a baby, Sam added in a whisper. That's why it was so important for him to get that money. I was stunned. Why didn't he just tell me everything? We could have worked something out, and now everything was destroyed. Sam kept saying that he didn't know how to tell me, because I probably would have left him right away after that, and he didn't want to lose me, but what you did only made it worse. Sam took my hand and whispered that if I didn't want to see him again, he would never come into my life again. I didn't have the strength to answer, so he left. And I lay there, gaze fixed at some point. Suddenly, I heard a child in the next room start laughing. It was like an electric shock. I realized that Sam had done the right thing by deciding to save his child. We needed to give the money immediately so that Caroline could have the surgery. With trembling hands, I texted Sam. Sam, I want you to be happy. Do everything you need to make sure that your baby is born healthy. I was discharged a week later, and Sam came to pick me up in his car to take me to another hospital, to where Caroline's surgery was taking place. I was still weak, but all I could think about was making sure the surgery was successful. The waiting was driving me crazy. I couldn't find a place for myself, and Sam was also very worried. But even in the state, he did not let go of my hand, repeating that everything would go well. 4 hours later, the doctor finally came out of the room. How is it going, doctor? His gaze made me pause. The doctor said they did everything they could, but they couldn't save Caroline. I felt like I was blacking out, but I just squeezed Sam's hand harder. Please hold on. Gathering my strength, I was able to ask only one question. What about the baby? The doctor said that the girl was now in intensive care and her condition was stable. I almost fainted in my excitement, but Sam caught me. He was stunned by the news and could not believe that he had become a father. After all, after his diagnosis, he did not dare to think about such a thing. I knew he was hurt by the news about Caroline, and I hugged him as hard as I could. At that moment, I leaned over to Sam and whispered that we wouldn't give the baby to anyone. Sam held me tight and told me how incredibly lucky he was to have a woman like me. I realized how important it is to be able to forgive, and now I have everything I dreamed of: a husband I love very much, and our dear baby. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you.